Hey guys, thank you for tuning into Moo Outdoors. My good buddy Ryan Cook did another excellent seminar at Fisherman's Warehouse in Manteca about spring bass fishing. This is a part one of his seminar. He talks about how to locate them, best lure for springtime, and how to work those lures.
All right, guys, thank you all for coming. Really appreciate it. Taking time out of your busy weeks, I'm sure, to come listen to me yap about fishing for an hour. So I really, really appreciate it. As you can tell by it's spring. This is the first day that I've worn shorts. You can also tell that by my white legs. But spring is here. The warm weather's here. The fish are moving up. I was out at Don Pedro today. There's bedfish at Don Pedro. I was out at McClure 2 days ago. There's bedfish at McClure. There's not a lot of big ones up yet. They're going to be up literally any time. It could be right now. I mean, they are moving up hour by hour, minute by minute. One thing I want to talk about first is fish conservation in the springtime. So whether you are a fan of bed fishing, of sight fishing, whether you're not a fan of it, you are catching spawning fish in the spring whether you want to or not. You can't help it. If you're throwing a worm, a jig, a Cinco, a spinnerbait, a ripbait, anything shallower than 20 foot of water, you're going to catch spawning fish. So there's always that stigma with bed fishing where, you know, it's not right. You're really harming these fish. I hate to tell you guys, but whether you want to or not, you're catching spawning fish if you're fishing in the months of March, April, and May. With that being said, it is very important to not keep fish this time of year. I'm all for, if you want to go out, keep a few bass here and there, take them home and eat them. Just don't keep the big ones. This time of year, you don't want to. You're hurting the population when you keep them this time of year. They are ready to spawn. They're doing their thing. Just let them go. If you catch them shallow in the spring, get a picture, throw them back in. If you're in a tournament, obviously you have to go weigh them in. You can't take them back to their beds usually. That would be the only time. Other than that, just get them back in the water as quick as possible. It's just important this time of year. I wanted to talk about that. And before I forget, springtime, I'm doing a lot of visual stuff. Even if I'm not sight fishing these fish, I'm staying shallow, and good polarized glasses is huge. I mean, you can go to Walmart and buy you the little $15.99 Strike King deals. Do they work? Yeah. Are they as good as a high dollar pair? No, they're not. Spend however much money you can spend, whatever your budget allows you on sunglasses, spend it. This is the time of year it's going to make a big difference for a lot of reasons. When we're talking followers on certain baits, actually seeing bedfish, seeing beds, seeing any sort of movement under the water that you need to see, it's really important. And I like to have 2 or 3 different color lenses. If you don't have that option, if you can only afford 1 pair of sunglasses, get amber lenses. Orange, yellowish, something bright. You're always better off having too bright than too dark. So for what that's worth, now we're going to get started. Before I get into the baits and the techniques on how we catch these fish, you need to know where to look for them, right? So springtime migration, where are you going to look for these fish? You have to think early spring, mid-spring, and late spring, right? Early spring, you have to think, where is the water going to warm up the quickest? So obviously your main lake points, not going to be your warmest water. You need to go where the sunlight has the most penetration through the water column. So the backs of your coves, right? Your long creek channels. This creek channel runs this way, shoots off to the right, and for 80 yards, it's only 30 foot deep or less. That's where your water is going to warm up the quickest. That's where you're going to find bedfish. And it's like clockwork. We're at Don Pedro today. We went to the back of a couple of major creek channels. The very back, the water's 63, 64 degrees. You come out to the main lake, 2 miles away, the water's 58, 59. It's a big difference, especially this time of year. It's not like in the winter time where it's almost all the same. Early spring, you're going to look way back in, shallow water, way back in off the main lake. As it warms up, as the spring continues, you're going to back off. Now you're going to back off to, right now we're in, towards the end of March. Come about middle of April, I'm going to start looking about halfway back in these creek channels towards the main lake. Come end of April, I'm going to actually look on the main lake. I'm going to look on main lake island tops if they're shallow enough. I'm going to look on main lake points, main lake steep bluff walls. They'll spawn anywhere. They don't have to spawn back in shallow water in the backs of these coves. That's the first early springtime thing, and that's a common misconception. Everybody thinks just because they don't see these bedfish now and it's the end of April that they're done spawning. That's not the case. These fish will spawn sometimes halfway through the summer on these lakes. 80-degree water, they will still spawn. I've seen them several times. And the other thing is talking largemouth versus spotted bass. We have a lot of spotted bass and a lot of largemouth in all three of these motherlode lakes. In the spring, they spawn on different stuff, and you target them different ways. The spotted bass are always going to be a little bit deeper. Typically, you won't see spotted bass spawning. A few of you probably have. I've caught them. I probably see 10 to 20 spotted bass a year spawning versus several thousand largemouth. They spawn deeper, they spawn on bigger rock, and they spawn more main lake. They don't hardly ever get way backs in the creeks and spawn. So just remember that, like I talked about in my last seminar, spotted bass are going to be out more on the main lake, largemouth are going to be farther back in. Same goes for the spawn. Let's get down to some baits. I'm going to start off with all your basic springtime baits. Any of these can catch a giant, but then I want to get more in, I want to get dialed into the bigger stuff. Or the stuff that's going to get you a bigger bite, which is generally the bigger baits. First and foremost, your number one bait in the springtime for a search tool. And when I say search tool, I'm talking a bait you can go out, you can cover a lot of water, you can fish it fast, you're going to get some bites on it, but more importantly, you're going to pull these fish out of the cover, out of their spawning, off of their bed. You're going to pull them out where you can see them, and it's going to give you an idea where they're at. So when I say search bait, do not always think that this is a bait you're going to go throw and catch 20, 30 fish on. You can, but it's a tool to find them, and that's what's important to remember. And of course, the first one I'm going to talk about, I forgot. A river to sea S-waver. Is there any way that you can go grab a river to sea S-waver? Yeah. It's the 168 and light trout, if they have it. If not, grab whatever one. I'm sorry.
Is that light trout your favorite color?
So the light trout is my go-to. If I don't know what color to throw, I'm going to throw light trout. If I got a lot of sunlight, if it's a real bright day and it's midday, I'm going to throw something with a little bit more chrome in it. A regular trout, a kokanee, whatever. I'm not big on color, you know. I'm going to throw light trout or I'm going to throw something shiny. Those are the only two colors I throw. A good one is Party Crasher. So this is the bone color, but it's really close to light trout. I'm going to pass this around, but this bait right here in the springtime, as far as reaction baits go, this has caught me more big fish, this size, the 168, the smaller one, than probably any other bait on our motherlode lakes. And the main key to this bait, like I said, you don't have to catch them on it. But you can throw this thing down a bank. If you have a little bit of chop and you can't see in the water real well, you can throw this thing down the bank and you'll get 2 7-pounders to follow it to the boat. And you see where they came from, and there's only 3 pieces of cover in the next 30 yards. Well, now you just sit there and pick apart those 3 pieces of cover. They already told you where they're at. It's important to mention you don't want to necessarily go pick them apart right away. Give those fish some time, give them 15, 20 minutes to go reposition. They will reposition. It might take 5 minutes, it might take 30. Give them some time, come back and hit those pieces of cover again. Mark them on your GPS. If you've got a good memory, just remember it. I'm going to pass this around though. This bait, and we're going to talk about this more, this is a key to springtime success, especially in clear water. So it's a river to sea S-waver 168. That's the bone color. The light trout's my favorite. The bone will work. Brighter, sunnier days, you want something with some silver in it. One thing to keep in mind on these river to sea S-wavers, that one in particular has good hooks on it. You'll see they're a nice, stout, number 1 2X hook. 2X means 2 times the strength. Some of the baits, depending on where river to sea gets them, does not have those hooks on it. If it does not have that style of hook, and pay attention to that, you need to change them out. And I'm going to talk out changing hooks later. I got everything up here to show you guys how to do that, what to do it with. I try to fish any bait that I'm fishing as fast as I can fish it. You want to get a reaction strike out of them. If you're not getting any followers, slow that thing down, throw it out, let it sink down 10, 15 foot of water, whatever you need to do. Change it up until you get some fish to follow it. In the spring, like I said, it doesn't matter if they eat it. Ideally, you don't want to catch a 10-pounder on treble hooks, right? Treble hooks, hard to land fish. You lose a lot of them, frustrates you, you get mad. The best case scenario is you get a 10-pounder to come out, look at that thing right by the boat. You see where she came from right over here. There's a nice little rock, little piece of wood sticking out from it, 10 foot of water, and you know, okay, that's her home, that's where she's living, that's where she came from. Come back 30 minutes later, fire a big old giant 7-inch Cinco, big old jig, shaky head, whatever your bait of choice is, whatever they're biting that day, and fish that piece of cover thoroughly. Make 10 casts at it, 15, 20 casts at it. If she was 10 plus, I might make 50 casts at it, you know what I mean? I don't have that much patience, but I would if I did. The second bait I want to talk about, and this is a bait that is near and dear to my heart. I have caught more big fish on it than any other bait out there besides a jig. That is your good old $5.99 Super Spook. You cannot beat this bait. You can cover a ton of water. They eat it anywhere you go. I've caught double digits on this on the Delta. I've caught 2 teeners on this, one on the Delta, one at McClure. I've caught a lot of 10-pounders on this on our lakes in the Delta. It'll catch anything from your little 4-inch bass swimming around in the springtime up to the fish that are eating those fish, and it'll catch anything that swims. One thing with this bait, as soon as you get it, the most important part of this bait, cut off the hooks and split rings. They're garbage. Trust me, anybody that tells you otherwise has never caught a big fish on them, or they've been very, very lucky. My hook of choice is a Gamakatsu number 2 EWG treble hook. This is it doesn't say 2X on here, but this is a heavy wire hook. It's like a 2X hook. I'm going to pass this stuff around. These are the split rings I change out on them. They have all this stuff here at the store, guys. I'm not trying to sell a product for them. I'm telling you this because you don't want your heart broken when you hook an 8 or 9, 10-pounder on this thing, and it will happen. So this is what you want. I'm going to talk about how to fish this bait right now as I pass that around.
It's also good for stripers.
It is good for stripers. Actually, the 13, it was a 13.6 I caught at the Delta on that. I was striper fishing, of course. That's how it always happens. The Super Spook, guys, not a lot of people throw topwater this time of year. They think it's still too cold because you're not going to get a lot of bites. I mean, you can go to any of our motherlode lakes right now. You're going to go throw a spook all day long under the best conditions, under the best areas, and you're going to be lucky to get 5 bites on it. That bait to me right now is the equivalent of a Huddleston in December, right? You're going to throw that thing under the best stuff and under the best conditions, you might get 2 or 3 fish on it, you know. But they're going to be the right ones, typically. Not always, but you're targeting bigger fish. Once March rolls around, and I'm a little bit of a liar right now because I haven't been doing it, but I'm going to now, and I've been thinking about it tonight. Usually once March rolls around, I will not go to the lake without a Super Spook tied on the deck of my boat. Always. Always, always, always Super Spook. The warmer it gets, the more bites you're going to get. The quality is going to start going down a little bit on the average. Then as you get into summer, midsummer, that bait's going to fire right back up again. The only time I don't throw a topwater Super Spook when I'm throwing topwater this time of year is if I have too much chop on the water and I can't walk that bait right. Then I'm going to go to something like a pencil popper with a cupped mouth. It works through the chop a little bit better. Or the good old whopper plopper. If you know anything about bass fishing nowadays, you know about the whopper plopper. Everybody throws it. It's been winning tournaments all across the nation on the highest level, and it just catches fish. And it's the easiest topwater bait to throw. You throw it out, chuck and wind. It's like a buzz bait, but it's even easier because you have treble hooks, and now you don't have to get a hook into those fish real good. You throw it on braided line, 50-pound braid. This or the Super Spook I'm throwing on straight braided line. This is something that a lot of guys don't talk about, line on topwater baits. A lot of guys want to throw mono. Everything you've always heard, right? Mono, you need that extra stretch. No, you want to throw a braid and you want to throw a softer rod. The rod action, the rod strength depends on the size treble hooks I'm throwing. The smaller the treble, the softer the rod. The more sturdy the treble, the stiffer the rod. But I pretty much always stick with 50-pound braid. And I used to throw a lot of 30-pound braid when I throw topwater baits on the lakes. And it's nice because you can get the distance. But the thinner braid seems to wrap in those treble hooks a lot. If you throw 50-pound braid, you don't have that wrapping problem, all of that stuff. And it's just solid. And then you can go back and forth, Delta or the lakes, same line, same rod, it's going to get it done. I'm going to pass these around. I like the 130 under typical choppy conditions. If I feel like they're biting this bait better than the Super Spook, which sometimes happens early spring, I will go down to the smaller one. So I'm gonna pass both of those around. That's just a good, like a sexy shad color. It's a good general all-around color. On topwater baits, don't get hung up on color, guys, because it really doesn't matter. It does not matter. It's all profile. It's all presentation. We didn't talk buzzbait. I don't throw a buzzbait a lot early spring. That's more of a late spring thing. But I'll be honest, if you fish the Delta a lot, once the water gets above 60 degrees, have a buzzbait tied on. Do yourself a favor, have a buzzbait tied on. You're going to fish it real similar to how I'm talking about this bait. On the lakes, on the clear water, that has become my buzzbait because I get more bites on it, I get bigger bites on it, and I have treble hooks. I don't have a single hook. The problem with the clearer the water is, the more often these fish will miss a topwater bait, believe it or not. The murkier it is, the more often they're going to get it because they don't get a good look at it. They just see it and they just eat it. In the clear water, I think they're more curious about it and they hit it a lot more out of aggression than they do out of a feeding strike. So that whopper plopper with the treble hooks has become my buzz bait on the lakes. Spinnerbait. In the spring, Matt Allen talks about this all the time, guys, but right now, early spring is the best time of the year to throw spinnerbait. This is a Dobbins half ounce. It's white, silver and nickel blade. It's got a Colorado willow. I'm not sponsored by Dobbins. He just makes a really good spinnerbait. So spinnerbait conditions, first thing in the morning, low light, choppy conditions. On the Delta, I mean, if you're on the Delta, you need a spinnerbait tied on 12 months out of the year. On the lakes, you really do too, but I mean, this guy's a Delta guy. Dude, a spinnerbait's like,
All day.
it's like a Cinco, right? You got to have it all the time.
All day.
Same thing on the lakes right now. This will get you some of the biggest bites in the lake. And the nice thing about a spinnerbait is it's the same as a jig. Once you stick one on this thing, those jokers very seldom come off. They can't hardly throw this bait. It's got a big hook in it. You throw it on heavy line. They hit it, you jack them, and you just horse them. You just grind them. And you don't lose very many. So, got to throw a spinnerbait in there. It's a four-wheel drive of baits. I mean, you can get it right in the center of the wood that they're living in. You can get it right in the center of that rock pile they're living in. You can bounce it through that cover, get them to react to it, and very seldom snag it up. So, Dobbins half-ounce spinnerbait, pass that around.
Is it braid or mono?
Spinnerbait, I'm usually throwing on 15 or 20-pound fluorocarbon. If you're a monofilament or a braid guy, that is fine. Mono gets the job done. I would go 15-pound mono. The problem is you lose a little bit of sensitivity, so you don't necessarily, for feeling a bite, that's fine. I think sometimes too sensitive is counterproductive. I think you need to let those fish eat it longer than most people do. The problem is you don't feel the cover as well, so you can't hardly tell if it's rock, if it's wood, if it's coming up and over, if it's already up and you need to let it glide down. It's a feel thing, so I like fluorocarbon. Braid to a leader works really well on a spinnerbait. 30-pound braid, 40-pound braid, 50-pound braid to a 15-pound mono leader. Now you're talking. Now you're perfect because that mono's got a lot of stretch. The braid has zero stretch, so it kind of makes up for. Braid to mono almost feels the same as straight fluorocarbon if you're throwing a spinnerbait. It's very similar, a little bit more sensitive still, depending on the length of the leader that you're going to use. So either 15-pound mono or I'd say ideally 40-pound braid to a 15-pound leader. That would be perfect. 30-pound braid to a 15-pound leader. Okay, rip bait. I'll be the first to admit, anybody that's fished with me knows I'm not a rip bait guy. At this time, honestly, I don't even know if I own one. I don't even know if I have a rip bait at my house right now. I can't stand them because I don't like fighting big fish on little treble hooks because I don't have the patience to sit there and play them. With that being said, I have had my butt kicked on this thing in the spring more times than I care to even recall. So we're going to talk about it because it works and it catches a lot of fish and it catches big fish. It catches giant fish, especially right now. Pre-spawn, early spawn to halfway through the spawn, this bait should be tied on the deck of your boat. It would be on mine if I wasn't so stubborn. Rip bait, 10-pound fluorocarbon. If you want to get it down real deep, go 8-pound fluorocarbon. I wouldn't throw it on anything less than 8 because you're going to get your heart broken. This is the new Mega Bass. Everybody knows about Mega Bass. They're a great bait. They catch a lot of fish. I just grabbed this one because it looked pretty. But the thing to keep in mind with this, until the water gets above about 65, is you got to fish it slow, right? You throw it out, pop, 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 get it down to its depth. This one should run about 8 to 10 foot. Get it down 6 or 7, 8 foot, and then pause it. And I'm talking pause it like as long as you can stand. The good days I have had ripping, I've caught most of my big fish on an 8 to 10 second pause. And it's not always on the pause, but you go to hit it again. As soon as you move it, that's when they eat it. Because they come up, and they come from all around. Out of nature, bass are curious creatures. If something's moving erratically in front of them, near them, they're going to go check it out. They might not go up and swat at it right away, but they're going to go up, they're going to get close, they're going to get a good look at it. And then as they're sitting here, and this thing's coming through the water like this, and they're sitting right here, they kind of inch closer, pop, pop, inch closer, pop, pop. It's that old cat and mouse game, right? And the thing about this is because of the way you fish it, when you fish it slow with long pauses, you're going to get more than one fish to get it attracted to it, right? More than one fish interested. And that's the whole deal with catching big fish. I talked about this in the jig fishing seminar, but you have to get other fish involved. These big fish are smart. They've seen this stuff. If they're by themselves, their chances of eating this are very slim. If you get an 8-pounder by itself, looking at this bait, it doesn't matter how you work it, they're probably not going to eat it. If you get 1 2-pounder to get anywhere near that fish, your chances just went up like 80% of her eating this bait. Because just like a dog, right? You throw a bone out there, you got 5 dogs, they all want that bone. It's the same with bass. You have to put the odds in your favor as far as how slow you fish this bait at the right time, because you want other fish to get involved. Does that make sense? You fish it too fast, the 2-pounder is going to come out and swat at it. The 8-pounder never saw it. She didn't get close enough to it, and you just blew the whole spot. Unless you can keep them fired up, but that's more of a late spring thing that we'll hope to get into. Anyway, that's the rip bait. 7-foot medium power rod, 10-pound fluorocarbon, 8-pound fluorocarbon is going to get it done. If you're on the Delta, you're in thicker stuff, you're around a lot of cover, and the fish are shallower, throw it on 12-pound fluorocarbon. I wouldn't go above 12, you just don't have the right action. I recommend straight fluoro, but that's a personal preference thing. The Tactical Bassin guys, Matt Allen, Tim Little up at Clear Lake, they do braid the leader on everything. But you hear Matt talk about if you're gonna go braid to a leader, he really prefers a mono leader because you want that extra stretch. And like I said before, don't get too caught up in that whole monofilament versus fluorocarbon as far as getting bites, especially with reaction baits. It makes no difference whatsoever. I can promise you no difference. The clearer the water, the more silent I want that bait, with the exception being late spring, early summer when they get real aggressive. Right now, if I have less than 5 foot of visibility, I'll go with a rattle. Anything more than 5 foot, I'm going to throw no rattle. I want it silent. Same for my topwater baits. On your rip baits, you want that thing to suspend. You don't want it to fall. You don't want it to rise. You want it, because when you kill it and you're letting it sit for 8 seconds, you don't want that thing to move. You don't even want it to tilt. You want it to sit perfectly still. And then you're going to hit it. And you let it sit. If it sinks and you're throwing it in 10 foot of water and you're down 5, well, by the time you did your 5-second count, you're on the bottom. Now you're hung up. So it messes you up. If it comes up on you and you're in 5 foot of water, and I say 5 foot because that's kind of the zone I'm targeting right now on our lakes. I'm staying real shallow for the most part. Today we had to go out deeper, but in 2 more days that's going to be done all the way through the summer. So now I'm going to go into what I call your money baits. You're just go out, get a bunch of bites in the spring. You can obviously catch a giant. And this is the nice thing about the springtime, guys. These fish are accessible. And this is going to be really important what I'm going to say right now. In the wintertime, you can go throw a jig in 5 foot of water, and you can have one that's come up to eat a crawdad, and you can catch a 12, 13 pounder. It happens quite a bit, but it doesn't happen that often. You know what I'm saying? In the springtime, on our mother lode lakes, I'm going to get off the Delta here for a second, straight mother lode lakes or straight clear water lakes, these fish, they have an abundance of kokanee and trout out in deep water, out in open water year round, that they don't ever need to come to the bank. Most of these big spotted bass and big largemouth, the only time they come to the bank, most of them, is to spawn. They have to. Nature tells them they have to go up. They have to go get this done, right? The rest of the year, there's no need for them to come up. When they've got schools and schools of 6 and 8 inch kokanee out there, schools and schools of 8 to 10 inch trout out there, why are they going to come up and come chase a crawdad around the rocks? You know, it just doesn't make sense. In the springtime, they have to. They can't spawn in deep water, with the except, well, they can if there's cables and whatnot. But for the most part, they have to come up shallow. So this is your best shot at a true giant in the springtime. Whether you're visually seeing them or not, you know they're around. They are accessible. They are within casting distance.